Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rias. I am the Director for Civil, Human, and Women's Rights at the AFL-CIO, and welcome to the AFL-CIO's convention. This micro-training is on algorithmic bias, and so it could be a complicated topic for some, but we're going to try and break things down a little bit. We'll start with a definition. What is algorithmic bias? So algorithmic bias occurs when AI-generated outputs use flawed information, assumptions about machine learning processes, or biased data. So algorithmic bias produces systematically prejudiced or unfair outcomes. I would compare this to building a house, where when you build the house, if you have all of your wood is a millimeter or so off, and when it all comes together, your house is off. Your house is biased. That is algorithmic bias by comparison. So it essentially mirrors or amplifies human prejudices and historical inequalities through a digital form. So that, if you can conceptualize, that is what we're talking about when I say algorithmic bias. So to start our conversation, let's field a few questions. Who has, raise your hand if you have used AI in the past 12 months.
Not intentionally.
You've probably used it in the past 12 minutes and not even known it. Next question. Raise your hand if you have ever used an LLM chatbot, like ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. Okay, you've never.
Never.
Wow. Good. Well, that's interesting. Have you ever used a customer service chatbot?
I have in a pinch. No.
Yeah. Well, I'm not judging whether you did. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just asking if you've done it. So folks have raised their hand. Okay, next question. Raise your hand if you have applied for a loan recently, an apartment, or a new job. All right, we got some hands. All right. Now, next question. Raise your hand if you use AI transcription tools or services through like Zoom or Google Meet. Yeah. All right, most people raise their hands at least once, and I think you've all raised your hands at least 3 times. So chatbots and large language models, which I'm going to refer to as LLMs, and I have referred to as LLMs, and transcription models like Google and Zoom, they're largely fast, and they're largely free, and most people use them a lot. But we use them because they make our lives easier, they're simple, and they help us to some degree. However, these models are fast and free and accessible because they are collecting information, they are doing more complex tasks in the background, or they're planning to do more complex tasks in the future. And they're tailoring information to you. So, for example, who's used Google recently? So if you're looking for purple drapes on a Google search, you'll get a list of outputs, right? But at the top, it'll also give you some things, purple drapes, to sell you. It'll pick what their top suggestions are. Or have you used Instagram or TikTok, right? You'll scroll, and if you engage with something on TikTok or Instagram, what does it do? It gives you more of it. And it's fast, it's free, and it's accessible, but it's collecting information so that it can do more complex things later, like sell you purple drapes from a particular store. And so AI has similar implications where it's free now, but as it collects information, it wants to start tailoring things to you. This can also be true in the misinformation, the targeting sense of the work. For example, there's some broader implications here because in 2019, the National Urban League, they published a report about the 2016 election. And in that election, from the report, they say that foreign and domestic digital services were targeting misinformation and disinformation to the black community in particular to sway them away from voting. And it was effective to some degree in the outcomes, but it was also effective to some degree in how folks were thinking about elections. It was sowing distrust in the elections. And so when we think about how the social media tools and the algorithms through social media are used to target information, the same can be true in AI, whether it's intentionally biased or unintentionally biased. So with the AI tools that the models that we use every day, it's important that we give it a skeptical eye. I'm not saying that these things are bad, right? We use them, they're helpful, and can be helpful. But we have to understand and take a peek behind the curtain, because we have to understand that these algorithms, these systems are built on data from the past. And when that past data is flawed, just like a millimeter off in wood when you're building a house, when that data is flawed, it can really bias the way the outputs generate for you based off of your question. So let's go back to some slides for some real world examples. Go to the next slide, please. So multiple choice question here. What data is collected on workers in the workplace? Is it A, the frequency and length of bathroom breaks? B, eye movement or facial expressions? C, sensitive personal information including race, gender, age, social security number? Any answers? All right, there is a consensus that it's all of the above. Next. Next. So the answer is all of the above. Now I have a question for you. Where within these options, where might algorithmic bias show up? B.
B for sure.
Why do you say B? Eye movement or facial expressions?
Because it seems like the information we heard is that when AI is collecting data about people's faces, it is doing so using historically biased data about how people look.
That's a good point. There's a study called the Coded Gaze that I would suggest you look into, because it talks about just that, particularly shades of faces. But what about folks who have a physical impairment or an injury? Exactly. And so if you have some feature on your face that does not move the way the AI is trained to detect, is that embedded bias based off of a disability? Potentially, right? What about the frequency or length of bathroom breaks?
So that's going to discriminate against pregnant women.
Right? Or disabilities? Right. Right? Yeah. So older workers, right? So if you have a condition that makes you need to go to the restroom more frequently, or if you're pregnant and you're nursing or collecting breast milk, like that will increase the frequency, right? What about sensitive personal information like age, race, gender? What about where is bias embedded there in the collection of that data? So I would have you think about this. What are they collecting the data for, right? And to what conclusions are they training AI to output based off of that data? So next slide. Next. So which of the following best shows discriminatory behavior by an AI system? A, an e-commerce website offers different prices same product to people living in different zip codes. A job hiring platform's algorithm penalizes candidates for attending women's colleges. C, an elderly patient breaks their leg and their insurance company denies the claim for the trip to the ER. D, ChatGPT generates an image of a white male when you prompt it for a picture of a CEO. Which one of the following best shows discriminatory behavior by an AI system? All of the above. Right. So the answer is obviously all of the above, and these are actually, some of them at least, are true examples that we've already seen occur in the housing context, as well certainly in the image generation context. So what's the point in learning about all of this? We're often told that AI is neutral, but when AI tools produce unfair or discriminatory results, they become gatekeepers to economic opportunity. Whether you're applying for a job or a loan or even trying to see a doctor, the algorithm is increasingly deciding for you whether you get into the door. And these are based off of hidden formulas, old data that can bake in some of the same biases that we've seen and fought against through history. When tech billionaires take the easy route and bypass what it takes to circumvent or stop or prevent discrimination, it prioritizes their bottom line over fairness. And in a way, they're automating, through their convenience, they're automating discrimination. In the alternative, imagine a world where AI reflects the people and data that is fueling it fairly, without discrimination, without bias, and without profit at the expense of people's dignity. The future, welcome sir, the future, we're talking about AI discrimination here. Yeah. So what we're talking about is how bias in algorithms can compound. And the way that I'm discussing it is, if we were to build a house and the tools were a millimeter off and the cut of wood for all the wood is a millimeter off, you're gonna have a biased house, right? That house is not gonna be too sound. The way algorithms are developed, discrimination can seep in there too. So some of the examples we use is, if you are, some of the folks raise their hand, if you're applying for a job and the algorithm is designed to read your resume and it finds that you went to a women's college, but this is a role for a manager or director, it might penalize you based off of historical data against getting that job, whether you're qualified or not, because of the school that you went to. So that's what we're talking about here. And we're talking about, at this point in the presentation, talking about a future for AI. A future that, if it's going to change the world, changes the world with dignity and people at the center. AI civil rights is possible, right? We need strong protections because AI currently is not being regulated at all. AI, in fact, states that want to regulate AI are being penalized by the federal government to stop their regulation because the tech billionaires are running roughshod with the process. So we need strong protections to open doors to this technology for folks across our country, no matter who you are or where you're from, to better help you in your work, in your day, in your life, but also to not exclude you from economic opportunity. And so if all of the technologies that have changed the world, the steam engine, the car, the internet, massively regulated industries. You can't drive an engine without each part being scrutinized. That is not the case with AI right now, and that is a problem. And so when these systems produce unfair and discriminatory results, It can unjustifiably privilege some folks at the detriment of other folks. And without that regulation, biased data and narrow design will create blind spots that are very, very difficult, if not impossible, to correct later. So that is what we're here to discuss today. Thank you for joining our micro training on AI discrimination. AI civil rights is possible.